You're listening to the Urban Farm Podcast, your partner in the grow your own food revolution. Whether you've just been introduced to urban farming or you're a lifelong advocate, we're sure you'll leave feeling more informed, equipped, and empowered to dig deeper into the soil of your local food economy. With you every step of the way, here's your host, Greg Peterson.
Do you want to save money at the grocery store, eat more organic, whole foods, cultivate food security, and feel more connected to the earth? If so, then growing your own food is a no-brainer. You wouldn't believe how many people come to me claiming that they can't grow their own food. They think they don't have enough space, that they're too busy, or that they simply don't have what it takes. Perhaps you've fallen for one of these gardening myths. If you think you can't grow food, or if you think the only food that you have access to is what you buy in the grocery store, I have a life-changing webinar that you need to see. It's free and will help you unearth your inner gardener. I've helped thousands of people just like you learn to grow their own food, and I'm speaking from my own experience when I say that with the right knowledge in place, there is no such thing as a black thumb. With this webinar, you can begin making your garden dreams come true and start growing delicious, nutritious food for your family. Just text GARDEN to 44222 or go to iwanttogarden.com and you will receive our free webinar about the 7 key factors you need to know to grow your own food. Remember, that's GARDEN to 44222 or iwanttogarden.com. Today on the Urban Farm Podcast, we have featured farmer Ray Jess to talk about wicking garden beds. After retiring from 2 careers, the Air Force and teaching, he pursued his love of food by graduating from the Phoenix Art Institute with a certificate in Culinary Arts. The highlight of his culinary experience was working as the chef for the 2007 Super Bowl at the University of Phoenix Stadium. Natural extensions for this self-proclaimed foodie were the completion of his Master Gardening training and his certificate in Permaculture Design. A love of fresh foods and herbs has kept him gardening for the last 2 decades, and during a volunteer component of his Master Gardner training, Ray discovered wicking garden beds. A man of curiosity and a seeker of ways to do things more efficiently, he embarked on a research project leading him to the father of wicking beds, Colin Austin. As a result of his research, his backyard garden has evolved from row crops in a plot of ground and raised beds to grow buckets and wicking beds. He is currently keeping his eyes open for the next great idea to perfect his garden so he can keep giving his family, friends, and neighbors fresh produce. Welcome to the show today, Ray.
Thank you. It's good to be here.
Oh my gosh, absolutely. Talking about wicking beds. We had Colin Austin on recently. He's one of your mentors from afar, yes?
Absolutely. I go to his website frequently to answer questions that I have.
Perfect. He's we like to call him the father of wicking beds. So I shared a bit about you. Can you fill in the blanks for us and share more about the path you took to get where you're at now?
Absolutely. I've done 2 careers. I've had teaching and I've had a military career. And, it all leads to food because food has been so important in my life as I was growing up. The way my mother would show love was through giving food to others and helping volunteering. And I think that has lent me to have the same idea. So I went through culinary school to learn how to prepare food better.
Wow.
I've gone through Master Gardner training to learn how to garden better, which was the small picture, because I always thought there was something larger after that. Through a friend of mine, I discovered the Permaculture Design course.
Oh, yes.
Finally gave me the big picture. Now I had the small picture, the big picture, and the means to put it all together, and I just love gardening.
Nice. So you brought up the word permaculture. I'd like for you to define that.
To me, permaculture is working with nature to have a sustainable food system.
And that's what you're doing in your yard, right?
I'm working to make that happen more and more every season.
Yeah, perfect. So how did you get started gardening?
My father started gardening when I was young, and every house that we lived in, he had some kind of a small garden. Of course, it was, dig up the ground, till it, add stuff to it, and have your little rows, and, you water it that way, and so on and so forth. But just the fact we always had that good, nutritious, homegrown food. In the old days, if you compared it to what you bought in the grocery stores, there was absolutely a world of difference in what he grew at home.
What were the first things that you grew?
I think I grew really easy things like carrots, tomatoes, and radishes, I believe.
Well, that's a great place to start, eh?
Well, they're almost foolproof.
Right. Put them in the ground, and especially with radishes, oh my gosh, you can get radishes in 28 days, right?
That's true, and they are so good. I mean, salads and other kinds of dishes that they will go in and bake them. Oh my goodness, they're marvelous.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Cool. So what led you to the Master Gardner training?
Well, I was working at one of the local nurseries for a few years, and because I interacted with the public so much, people always asked me, "Are you a Master Gardener? Are you a Master Gardener?" And my answer was always no, but I'm trying to learn more every day. And finally, I was talking with somebody who was a Master Gardener, and they told me about the program, and I went to look it up online and looked at the things that it covered, and it interested me. And with the urging of that knowledge and my wife, that was kind of the push that I needed to go in that direction.
Right. Cool. So what did you get out of the program?
Oh, my goodness.
I'd like to hear that.
Oh, it's like when I went to culinary school, I thought I was a good cook before I went. And it wasn't until I got there that I realized how little I actually knew. And the same goes for the Master Gardener program. I thought I was an all right food farmer until I went to the Master Gardener program, which started at the very basics. This is what soil is, and this is the break of how soil works and how the water works in the soil. And these are the plants, and this is how plants work, with the water uptake and the transpiration. And then it goes to plant identification, pruning, planting, and things that work together and things that don't work together. It was an eye-opening experience.
Wow. Cool. And then you had to take it one step further, or maybe many steps further, when you went to a permaculture design course. That's what we call in the permaculture world a PDC. It's a 72-hour design course. What did you get out of that?
Well, again, I thought I was a pretty good food farmer because I had learned throughout life, and I went to the Master Gardener program, and I thought I knew quite a bit. Until I went to the Permaculture Design course, and then it was like, oh, okay, I only knew a small portion. And from the Permaculture Design course, I learned that, the interaction between, top-growing plants and mid-growing plants and low-growing plants and those that give back nitrogen and fertilizers and so on back to the soil and how that continuously works. Rainwater harvesting, and there are groups that are permaculture-based that help each other throughout the valley, so that network of people within that system helping other people is phenomenal.
Yeah. Well, I'm just going to throw in there's actually networks of people all over the world that are doing permaculture. That's the cool thing. And there are permaculture design courses all over the world that you can take, and what I would suggest for people is that you put the name of your town in and permaculture design course after it and see what comes up. So who is a permaculture design course for, Ray?
It really is for any and everybody, whether you're growing grasses, you're growing food, you're growing flowers. It really teaches you how to work more in concert with nature to make it easier for you and better for the plant, and to make it not just sustainable, but thrive.
Yeah. Nice. Nice. Cool. Well, I know that was a little bit of a distraction from our conversation about wicking beds, but so Ray, just for full disclosure, Ray was in our fall permaculture design course here in Phoenix last fall. And so that's how I know Ray. And I could tell that it really lit you up, the permaculture design course.
It was a challenge to be in the permaculture design course because, like my father did everything in rows, and my military background was orderly, neat, and in rows. There is nothing in nature like that at all. And that was just the absolute largest hurdle that I had to overcome.
Oh, yes. Yeah. Well, perfect. Thanks for sharing about that. Let's get on to the wicking beds. It seems like a large topic out there of discussion these days. Our Colin wicking bed episode has had an amazing amount of listens, and an article that you recently wrote for the urbanfarm.org on wicking beds has gotten a lot of traction as well. So what is a wicking bed?
Wicking bed is a manner of growing food or flowers or what have you, just growing plants where you're watering from a reservoir underneath of the planting medium as opposed to on top. The advantages of it are immense. I mean, it uses 50% less water in most cases.
Wow.
You're not wasting your nutrients because you're not washing them away.
Yeah. That was a big one. That when you said that, it's I've been trying to wrap my head around this whole wicking bed conversation for the past 3 or 4 years, and it's like, why bother? That one is a big one, not washing away your nutrients, because we spend a lot of time and energy to get the nutrients there. So how does it not wash the nutrients away?
In a typical garden bed, when you prepare your bed, you're putting the nutrients in, you're working them in, you're putting your macronutrients, your NPK fertilizers.
Yep.
You're putting in your azomite for your trace elements. You're putting in mycorrhizal, and these things are all there, and they're beautiful, and they're ready to go. And you do your planting, and then you start watering. And in the typical bed, there is no bottom limit to the bed. Just water, and you water, and you water, and it dilutes, and as it goes deeper and deeper, it takes those nutrients away with it. Conversely, in a wicking bed, you are not watering from the top generally.
Right.
The water seeps up from the bottom through capillary action and evaporation. It waters from the bottom. It catches the nutrients at that root level where you have them. It puts them into solution, and it's an easier uptake for the root plant to take that nutrient into it, and it doesn't dissipate because there's no water washing it down into that reservoir and away.
I have a piece of dirt in my backyard, and I want to put in a wicking bed. What's the process look like, starting from the outside in?
Okay, well, from the outside in is I defined the area that I wanted to put the frame or the box that will contain my wicking bed, and I leveled that dirt out. And the wood that I used, you can use any kind of wood or material to make the box of a wicking bed because that material will never touch the water, so there's no trace chemicals. I personally used 2x12 pine that I stained. I used that stain because it was supposed to be a permanent stain that was weather resistant and so on, which was aesthetically pleasing. From that dirt and the box and that sand that I put at the bottom to level things out and make sure that there were no rocks that would puncture the pond liner that I put in. And I recommend pond liner as opposed to, say, like a painter's plastic or anything like that, because the painter's plastic will break down over time.
Right.
And a pond liner will last a very long time. From the pond liner, being the insert, what I used for the reservoir area was small river rock, half, 3/4 inch river rock. And I chose river rock because it has smooth edges and I knew it wouldn't puncture the liner.
Oh, right. Exactly.
With that rock, I determined the depth of my water reservoir to be about 10 inches or so.
Oh, wow.
And then I put a layer of shade cloth over the top, which would then support my planting medium, which I filled to about 10 inches or so, because water has a wicking ability of about 11.5. So I wanted to have good transfer of moisture between the reservoir and the top of the planting medium.
Wow. So there's a lot of physics that goes on here.
There is. The idea of wicking beds seems so easy, but there's actually a lot of science behind the development of it. Colin Austin was a phenomenal engineer that has been working on this for, oh my goodness, 25 plus years.
Right.
So, I don't profess that I would even come close to his knowledge, but I've done a lot of research, and I've had some ups and downs, some rights and wrongs, but it's still going well.
Well, that's the learning process, right?
We all go through it.
Yeah, exactly.
Hopefully.
Exactly. So they look like raised beds, and you line them after you put the sand down. You line them with a pond liner. Where do you get pond liners at?
I got mine online. I know that there are different vendors available online for pond liners, and I know that there are box stores that you can buy it at, or home stores that you can buy it at.
Yeah. All right, a pond liner. So it's a thicker liner, and then you said you put 8 to 10 inches of rock at the river rock at the bottom.
I did, and there were two reasons for that. One is that it has to create a void for air to be able to get in. Because if you don't have air in with your water, the water is going to get stagnant and stink and not be very effective. And two, it was the base to lay the fabric on so that the planting medium wouldn't just fall through and fill in all those empty spaces between the rocks.
Perfect. So, and that planting medium, that's like compost and potting soil and basically what you're going to grow your groceries in.
Absolutely, and you have to think that it has to be nutritious, because if there's no nutrients in the soil, there's not going to be nutrients in your food.
Yeah. Wow. All right, cool. So now we have this raised bed with the pond liner in it, the rocks in the bottom, the shade cloth in between, and your soil on top. Now what?
Well, I also put in a fill pipe into that rock. To get the water to go into the reservoir. And I also put a drain pipe with a sight tube so that I could see the water level and be able to drain the reservoir twice a year.
Got it. Why do we need to do that?
Well, in Arizona, we have very hard water. And as the water evaporates, and some of it, most of it is taken up into the plants, those hard water minerals and salts are not transferred into the plant themselves.
Got it.
So what that does is it accumulates in the water that's in the reservoir. So about twice a year, it's beneficial to flush out that water that is laden with the minerals and the salts and things like that. And if we overwater, that nutrient that may have gotten into the reservoir will also be drained out. And then just fill it back up, and you're good for another 6 months or so.
Got it. So why do you like wicking beds over standard raised beds?
I grew up in various homes with raised beds that I had made. But for me, living in the desert, the water conservation using 40 to 50% less water than a surface water bed was a big deal. Because water is a finite resource, and if I only have to water my bed maybe once every 2 to 3 weeks, then that's a bonus for me.
Yeah.
Wicking beds, because the surface of the planting medium is generally drier, it allows more air into the medium, plus it does not allow weeds to germinate. because the weeds would need the moisture, and it's not there.
Oh, right.
The fact that I can leave for a couple of weeks and still know that my plants are going to be watered is a beneficial deal. But I think the biggest thing is that I'm growing my own nutritious food at home for myself and, if I have excess, for my neighbors.
Right. Nice. Oh, okay, good. So here's a question that you asked me to ask you, and that's, you don't consider yourself a farmer, but you're always sending visitors home with veggies. Tell me about that.
To me, a farmer is somebody who does something for their business, for their livelihood. I just consider myself a family food farmer. I choose food over flowers and that type of thing.
Yeah.
So if that makes me a farmer, that's cool. But
I say it does.
The fact that, when I have people come over and they want to look at my wicking beds and find out more about them, they always leave with something that is harvested from that wicking bed, whether it's zucchini or onions or, tomatoes or what have you. I think it's important that when somebody shows an interest, you pique their interest with the taste that they can expect as well.
Yeah. So is there a size limit to wicking beds?
Well, square footage-wise, not generally. The idea that water will only wick up about 11.5 inches is the big thing for me. So if I have a 11.5-inch reservoir and I have a 10-inch soil bed, then those two combined are less than that 22 inches. So I'm good to go.
Yeah, perfect. So one of the things that I've never really understood, it's this capillary action. And I have a sense that if you plant seeds in your wicking bed, and you kind of alluded to it with the weed comment a moment ago, but if I plant seeds in my wicking bed, I've got to water it from the top down until they germinate. Is that the case?
That is absolutely true. Mm-hmm. But keep in mind that you're not truly watering. You're just spraying the soil lightly to get down that half an inch, 1 inch of soil. You don't want to saturate it at all.
Mm-hmm. Interesting. So what I hear you saying is that without root action, the capillary action is going to move the water up 11.5 inches from your basin at the bottom. So these plants are going to be fully watered.
That's absolutely true.
Wow.
There's a couple things to go with that. The capillary action, is going to move from one water molecule to the next, but also brings it into the root zone. And because the roots are pulling in water, that also aids with the water movement through the soil, through the reservoir. Mm-hmm.
So do you have to, I'm just thinking about the water in the wicking bed. Do you have to have that water touching the tops of the rocks?
No, you do not, because it's a process of capillary action and evaporation in the type of bed that I chose to build. Uh-huh. Through that action, it's going to raise up from the reservoir into the soil medium, and then the roots are going to help pull it up from that.
Wow, cool. Cool. So you have wicking beds in your yard, and they're producing quite prolifically now. What do you got growing?
Oh, I do. I have two wicking beds, 4 feet by 8 feet, and then I have grow buckets, which are like 5-gallon buckets that I got at a hardware store.
Yeah.
What I have growing, I have 2 different kinds of zucchini. I have okra, melons, cucumbers, onions, tomatoes, kale, and oh my gosh.
Wow.
I think I got
So do you find it easier to grow in a wicking bed? It sounds like you do.
Yeah, I do, because it's pretty much self-sufficient. Once you get it started, you can walk away from it. It's just totally easy.
Cool. So I know you to be a guy that tinkers a lot with things, and I know that you've been playing a lot with the wicking bed designs. Are you trying something new?
Yes, I am. When wicking beds first came about, Colin Austin used a sponge bed. He put down a liner and then used weeds and things like that and put the soil over the top of that. I'm going more towards that, not necessarily with weeds, but using a perforated drain pipe and soil as opposed to a rock reservoir.
Mm-hmm.
It's a more shallow bed, but we're going to work at that at a friend of mine's house in the next couple of weeks.
So rather than rocks in the bottom, you're using the perforated sewer pipes.
Correct.
And putting them in the bottom, so you'll be, 4 inches depth in the wicking bed part?
That's correct.
Wow.
And the total height of the bed will be no more than 11 inches or so.
Wow.
Well, the base of the bed and the top of the soil.
Yeah.
That creates the reservoir in the bottom between the void space in the perforated drain pipe and the soil in between the two pipes.
Yeah.
Or however many pipes.
Cool. So, all right, I got a question for you. Tell me about a life-transforming onion that you grew.
Oh, this was a story that I never thought in my life would ever get out.
Oh, my gosh.
I had a friend and her husband over for dinner.
Mm-hmm.
And, of course, I love sharing those things that I have grown, and we were doing a salad. And I went out to the garden bed and pulled this onion. I had the friend come with me, and we cleaned it off. And I just said, well, would you please take a bite of this onion? And
whoa. You wanted her to take a bite straight from the onion?
Absolutely.
Oh, my God, that's bold. I don't know that you'd convince me to do that, but go. What was your experience?
Everybody is so used to the pungent, acidic onions that they get from the grocery store that have been, the juices in them have been concentrated from the drying process.
Right.
When you pull an onion straight from the ground, not having to dehydrate anything, you get the full benefit of the flavor and the moisture and all that of an onion. She was very hesitant.
I would be very hesitant.
But she did take a bite, and she was absolutely amazed at the taste of that onion. And the fact that we used one similar on our salads and things like that was a life-changing event for her.
Wow.
Because she saw then the power of food or food that you raised yourself and how different it was. And that led her on a journey back to college. She was going to do something in business or something like that, but she changed her direction into food or sustainability to help our society make a better way of eating food and growing food and so on and so forth. The benefit of that is you never know what your actions will do for you or somebody else.
Big time. Well, I have to thank you for that, because this mystery person that we've been talking about is Janice, our podcast producer. She's a good friend of yours, and I know that you guys talk a lot, and so thanks, because she is an extraordinary member on our team.
She is an extraordinary person. I met her while I was teaching, and we bonded like brothers and sisters almost instantly.
Wow.
So we've had a decade-long friendship that has been just blossoming and learning, and it's been great.
Cool. Well, I'm going to shift on you, and I'd like for you to talk about a time you failed, how you overcame that failure, and what you might have learned from it.
Well, if I don't succeed at something, I don't take it as a failure. I take it as an opportunity to learn something. I think gardening-wise, one of the biggest things that I learned is I am really terrible at growing potatoes. Now, I have tried bags, I have tried beds, I have tried buckets, I have tried all kinds of things with potatoes, and I just don't seem to be able to do that. But I'm thinking now, why not try that in my wicking bed?
That's where I was going with it. So recently we had a home tour, an urban farm tour of Cricket's yard here in town. Did you see her rendition of growing potatoes?
I did. I was amazed by that. She used like a 15-gallon bucket and a 10-gallon bucket on top of that once the plant grew high enough.
Yep.
And then probably, I believe, a 5-gallon bucket on top of that.
Yeah.
So I'm thinking she should probably have a phenomenal harvest of potatoes.
Yeah,
I'm going to have to find out.
Yeah, we'll have to make sure that she keeps us in the loop on that. So just for a little bit more clarity, in fact, we should take a picture of this. We'll have Cricket take a picture of it and put it on the show notes page here. But what she did is she took a 15-gallon bucket on the bottom and filled it with potatoes or sweet potatoes you could put also in there, and then started growing. And then she took a 10-gallon bucket, cut the bottom off of it, added it on top of that once the sweet potatoes or potatoes are growing, and then kept them growing up. And then it did the same thing for a 5-gallon bucket on top of that. So it looks like a pyramid of potatoes.
It really does. But she made it look beautiful.
Yeah.
It was like a piece of art.
That's one of the things I loved about her space, is that it's definitely a beautiful space. She's done a lot of great work there.
Oh, she learned a lot from you and the Permaculture Guild that was previously here. The things that we can learn from courses like that are just phenomenal. And once we put it into practice and we get better at it, it just makes everything better and easier for us.
Yeah. Yeah. Pay attention. That's my lesson there. So what do you consider your biggest success?
Oh, my gosh. I don't consider successes big or small. I think they're just successes, and they're things that I can be proud of. I think currently, because I learned from Cricket initially about wicking beds, and then I did some research with that, and then I created my own. And the results that I have gotten from that, I think, are the most significant that I have in a great while. So if you call that a success, I think the wicking beds were my success. Beautiful.
What drives you?
Just the fact that I want to learn more. I want to share more. I love people. I love food. And the way I show love a lot of times is through food and how it's prepared. And if I can have you over for dinner and feed you things that I have grown in my garden, it's the love of food and preparing and all that drives me to become a better food farmer.
Yeah. I'll tell you what, there is nothing better than growing your own food in your yard and eating it, except maybe when you get to feed it to other people.
That is exactly true.
Yeah. Yeah. So I'm all about education, and I have to know, is there a book that has been influential for you in this process?
Honestly, I think, well, other than the Master Gardner manual, which was big for me when I learned it, I think putting it all together through the Permaculture Design course, a book called Gaia's Garden by Toby Hemingway.
Yeah.
It really puts permaculture in perspective for a residential yard as opposed to some grandiose, big establishment or something.
Yeah. Yeah. And Toby passed away late last year. And before he did, we were actually able to get him recording his Permaculture City course. So if you're interested in, learning from Toby, we've got the Permaculture City course that he did. Plus he was on our podcast last summer. So just many blessings out to Toby and his family. So what one final piece of advice do you have for our listeners?
Yeah, I think the biggest recommendation I would have would be, don't be afraid to experiment. Don't be afraid if something doesn't work the first time, learn from that, go on and make it better until you actually succeed and you thrive on that. And spread your knowledge and the things that you grow and the love that you have and the passion that you have for growing your own food.
Amen to that. Well, thank you so much for joining us on the show today, Ray. It's been a treat getting to chat with you.
Oh, Greg, it has been my pleasure. I thank you so very much for having me on.
Yeah, absolutely. Just as an aside, Ray is also our featured farmer on our website, and he has written an article on wicking beds for our blog. So you can find both of those links in the show notes page. And you can find the show notes page from today's podcast at urbanfarm.org/wicking bed. Well, that's it for today. Thanks for joining us on the Urban Farm Podcast. Do you want to save money at the grocery store? Eat more organic, whole foods? Cultivate food security and feel more connected to the earth? If so, then growing your own food is a no-brainer. You wouldn't believe how many people come to me claiming that they can't grow their own food. They think they don't have enough space, that they're too busy, or that they simply don't have what it takes. Perhaps you've fallen for one of these gardening myths. If you think you can't grow food, or if you think the only food that you have access to is what you buy in the grocery store, I have a life-changing webinar that you need to see. It's free and will help you unearth your inner gardener. I've helped thousands of people just like you learn to grow their own food, and I'm speaking from my own experience when I say that with the right knowledge in place, there is no such thing as a black thumb. With this webinar, you can begin making your garden dreams come true and start growing delicious, nutritious food for your family. Just text GARDEN to 44222 or go to iwanttogarden.com and you will receive our free webinar about the 7 key factors you need to know to grow your own food. Remember, that's GARDEN to 44222 or iwanttogarden.com.
We hope you enjoyed today's episode of the Urban Farm Podcast. Remember to listen 3 days a week for tips, advice, and resources to help you on your journey with urban farming. You can find us on the web at urbanfarm.org or send us an email to podcast@urbanfarm.org. In the words of Vincent van Gogh, great things are done by a series of small things brought together. Be encouraged that with each lesson learned and skill developed, you are one step closer in the direction of your dreams.